In a grand, floating chamber of the Galactic Council, alien representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered. The walls shimmered with an ethereal light as the room filled with the hum of voices, each creature speaking in a language so advanced, most humans couldn't even begin to understand. The vastness of space seemed to shrink within these walls, where beings from countless star systems convened. Among the many, there was one human. His name was Ethan, an ordinary man, with nothing special in his appearance or background that would suggest he was different. His eyes, however, held a certain calmness that seemed out of place. While most beings in the room were either busy whispering in groups or discussing matters of galactic importance, Ethan sat quietly, observing. The alien races considered humans to be young, newcomers to the galactic scene. They saw humanity as a naive species, unfit to take part in the High Council's decision-making processes. But there was something about Ethan that made him different. When the council began its meeting, the mood was condescending. Alien leaders from the four corners of the universe addressed Ethan with thinly veiled amusement. They exchanged looks, raising their brows at the human who had somehow made his way into this meeting. Some thought he might be a distraction. Others feared he might be there by mistake. All of them saw him as no more than a mere child compared to the countless civilizations they represented. The council president, a towering insectoid from the planet Sylar, stood up with a deep, resonating voice. "And now we hear from the human," he said, turning his gaze toward Ethan. "What knowledge does your species offer in the vast expanse of the universe?" Ethan stood up slowly, his movements deliberate and calm. The room fell silent. He had no special title, no known accomplishments, yet his presence seemed to demand attention. With steady eyes, he addressed the council. "Knowledge is not measured by age or time," Ethan replied. "It is not the size of your fleet or the number of worlds you've conquered that makes one wise. It is the understanding of the universe itself, and I believe humanity has understood it longer than most." The words seemed simple, but there was a quiet intensity in them, something that caught the attention of a few council members. The Silarian leader scoffed, clearly unimpressed. "You believe humans know more than we do?" he asked, his voice laced with sarcasm. Ethan's gaze didn't waver. "Not more. Just different," he said. "And perhaps you've forgotten things." A murmur rippled through the room. The council members exchanged looks. Some felt unease. Others dismissed it as the ramblings of an inexperienced species. Yet Ethan's words lingered in the air. There was something unsettling about his calm certainty, something that hinted there was much more to humanity than anyone had imagined. As the meeting continued, Ethan remained silent, his mind filled with thoughts about the deep history of his people, a history no one had ever known. And though the universe may have seen humans as young, Ethan knew that humanity had once been far more than they appeared. It was just a matter of time before the truth came to light. The first seeds of doubt had been planted. The universe had no idea who they were truly dealing with. The next day, the council convened again, this time with a more serious tone. The meeting hall, which was once full of chatter and laughter, had quieted. Ethan's words still echoed in the minds of the council members. Some of the more curious delegates, including an old and wise species called the Eldarians, began to wonder if there was more to this human than anyone had expected. They could sense there was a hidden depth to him. Ethan sat in his usual spot, observing the various representatives as they spoke. But today, he wasn't just a passive listener. He had come to the council prepared with something that would challenge everything the universe believed about his people. As the council president called the meeting to order, Ethan stood up once more, this time with a different energy. "Before we continue with today's agenda," Ethan began, his voice calm but firm, "I have something I would like to share with the council." A few of the representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats, while others, including the Silarian leader, raised an eyebrow. The Eldarians exchanged knowing glances, intrigued by the human's sudden confidence. Ethan placed a small metallic device on the table before him. It was old, very old, even by the standards of the most ancient races. The moment the device touched the table, a soft hum filled the air, and an image began to materialize above it. It was a holographic map of the galaxy, but there was something different about it. It didn't look like the maps the Council had seen before. This one showed regions of space that were completely unknown to anyone present. This, Ethan said, his fingers brushing over the floating map, is a map from a time long before your civilizations were born. It shows the paths of ancient human explorers, long lost to history. A hush fell over the room. The Council members were speechless. The map wasn't just a historical artifact. It was a guide to ancient star systems that no one had ever discovered. Even the most advanced species in the room couldn't identify some of the stars. They had never seen anything like it. The Tylarian leader stood up quickly, his antennae twitching with disbelief. "Where did you find this?" he demanded, his voice rising in shock. This is impossible." Ethan remained calm, his eyes never leaving the map. "You've seen only a fraction of the galaxy's true history," he replied. "This map is just a small part of what humanity once knew. Long before any of you, humans explored the stars." The room was now filled with murmurs of disbelief. Some of the Council members were still skeptical, unable to accept the idea that a species they saw as young could possess such ancient knowledge. But the Eldarians, with their long lifespans and wisdom, were beginning to understand. They recognized the technology, the subtle designs in the map, which they had seen only in legends. "There were humans before us," Ethan continued, "ancient humans who understood the stars in ways that you, and even your oldest civilizations, have long forgotten. The history you've been taught is wrong. Humanity was not always as you see us now." The Council president, a stoic being with glowing eyes, stood up slowly. "You are claiming that humanity was once an elder race?" he asked, his voice tinged with both curiosity and caution. Ethan nodded. "Yes, we were once among the most powerful and knowledgeable beings in the universe, but something happened. A great catastrophe erased much of what we once knew." The room fell silent again, the weight of Ethan's words settling over the Council. Some of the members began to question everything they thought they knew about their place in the galaxy. The truth was hidden from them, buried by time, and forgotten by most. Ethan's revelation was just the beginning. The universe had no idea what they had just set into motion. What they saw as a young species was actually the key to unlocking a far older and more profound truth. And as the Council sat in stunned silence, it became clear humanity was far more important than. The atmosphere in the Galactic Council chamber was tense. The Council members were still reeling from the humans' revelation, their minds racing with questions they hadn't dared ask until now. Ethan's words echoed through the room, leaving a trail of confusion and disbelief. The knowledge he shared had shattered everything they believed about humanity. Yet there was one thing no one could deny. The map he had shown was real, and it was from an era long before any of them had even existed. As the murmur of voices quieted, the Xylarian leader, who had been openly hostile toward Ethan, stood up again. His insectoid eyes glowed brightly, filled with a mix of suspicion and determination. "You claim that humanity once had knowledge beyond any of us, but we need proof," he declared, his voice sharp and unyielding. "Prove to us that what you say is true. Show us that your species is worthy of our respect." Ethan remained calm, his face unreadable. He had expected this challenge. The Council had to test him. They would not simply accept his words without proof, but Ethan was not afraid. He had come prepared. The Xylarian snapped his fingers, and immediately a massive holographic display appeared in the center of the room. The image was of an ancient alien artifact, one that no other species had been able to open or understand. It was said to hold the secrets of the universe, but its true nature had remained locked away for eons. The Xylarian leader's voice echoed through the chamber as he spoke. "This artifact has been in the hands of our greatest minds for centuries. We have tried everything, but it remains closed to us. If humanity is truly as ancient as you claim, perhaps you can unlock its secrets. A silence followed, and all eyes turned to Ethan. He stood, his gaze fixed on the artifact in the center of the room. The other council members watched closely, eager to see whether the human could live up to his words. Ethan stepped forward slowly, his movements deliberate and confident. As he reached the artifact, he paused for a moment, studying its intricate design. The hum of the room seemed to fade, leaving only the sound of his steady breath. He raised his hand and gently placed it on the surface of the artifact. For a moment, nothing happened. The council members exchanged glances, and the Xylarian leader's smug expression returned. Then, without warning, the artifact began to glow softly. A low, rumbling sound filled the room, and the complex patterns on its surface shifted and changed. The holographic display around it flickered, showing the symbols of an ancient civilization long forgotten. The Xylarian leader's eyes widened in shock. "Impossible," he hissed, his voice trembling. This should not be happening. But it was happening. Slowly, the artifact began to open, revealing a hidden compartment within. Inside was a glowing crystal, pulsating with energy that seemed to hum with a life of its own. Ethan carefully picked up the crystal, and the chamber fell silent once again. "This crystal is just one piece of the knowledge humanity once possessed," Ethan said, his voice steady and full of purpose. "This artifact is not from your people, but from mine, long before your species ever existed." The council members were left speechless. What had just occurred was beyond anything they had expected. The human had not only unlocked the artifact, but had done so with ease, as if it was a simple task for him. The room was filled with a sense of awe, and for the first time, the other alien races began to see humanity not as a young species, but as something far more ancient and powerful. Ethan looked around the room, his gaze steady. "Now you see," he said quietly, "the truth about humanity's past." The council was left in stunned silence. What had begun as a challenge had now turned into a moment of revelation. The universe had underestimated humanity, but not anymore. The mood in the council chamber had shifted. What was once filled with skepticism and disbelief was now thick with tension and curiosity. Ethan's demonstration with the artifact had stunned the council members. There were no more mocking glances or dismissive whispers. The beings that once saw humanity as little more than children were now beginning to doubt their understanding of the universe. The Xylarian leader, who had once been the loudest in his disdain for humanity, stood frozen, staring at the glowing crystal in Ethan's hand. He had expected the human to fail, to prove his species' worthlessness in the eyes of the galaxy. Instead, the human had done the impossible. He had unlocked a treasure that none of them could even touch. As the room settled, the council president, a composed and ancient being from the planet Cirrus, spoke. His voice was calm but filled with authority. "Ethan," he began, "you have shown us something we did not expect. But now you must tell us why humanity, if it was once so powerful, has fallen into such obscurity. What happened to your people?" The question hung in the air, and all eyes turned to Ethan. The entire council was waiting for an answer. Ethan had already given them a glimpse of humanity's forgotten history, but now they wanted the truth, the full story. Ethan took a deep breath and placed the glowing crystal on the table before him. The room grew silent as the soft light from the crystal bathed his face. "Humanity's fall is not a simple story," Ethan began, his voice steady but tinged with a hint of sorrow. "Thousands of years ago, humans were more than just explorers of the stars. We were the architects of civilization. We understood the universe in ways that no species today can even imagine." The council members leaned forward, their eyes fixed on the human. The Xylarian leader, now quiet, listened intently, though there was still a flicker of disbelief in his eyes. "But power breeds fear," Ethan continued. "Other races grew envious of humanity's knowledge and influence, and so we became a target. A great catastrophe struck, a war like no other. It was not fought with weapons or armies, but with knowledge. a secret war, fought in the shadows, one that erased much of what we knew. Our people were scattered, our history forgotten. The silence in the room grew heavier. Even the ancient Cirrus leader was visibly shaken by the gravity of Ethan's words. Many of our greatest minds were lost, Ethan said, his gaze distant as if recalling painful memories. The technology we once wielded, the wisdom we possessed, it was buried, sealed away. We became nothing more than a footnote in the history of the universe. The council, once filled with pride and arrogance, now seemed humbled. The thought that humanity had once stood at the center of the galaxy, as powerful and knowledgeable as any species, was almost too much for them to grasp. The Hilarian leader, who had once mocked Ethan, now spoke, his voice softer than before. Then, why were we never told of this? Why was humanity hidden from the rest of the universe? Ethan met the Xylarian's gaze without flinching, because it was easier to forget us than to face the truth. Your people, like mine, have been deceived. The history that has been passed down is not the truth. Humanity was once a great force, but we have been made to appear insignificant. The room was silent again, each council member processing the weight of Ethan's revelation. The universe they had known, its history, its power structures, was based on a lie. Ethan looked around at the council, his eyes steady. The time has come for humanity to remember. And when we do, the galaxy will never be the same again. The quiet hum of the chamber seemed to echo Ethan's words, as if the universe itself was waiting for humanity's return to greatness. The seeds of a new age were planted, and the universe had no idea what was coming. The mood in the Galactic Council chamber had shifted drastically since Ethan's revelations. What had started as disbelief and mockery had now turned into a subtle, growing fear. The council members, who once looked down on humanity, now felt uncertain about their place in the galaxy. The history Ethan had uncovered was far different from what they had been taught. It was a history of forgotten power, and many of them were beginning to question their own knowledge of the universe. As the meeting continued, the Xylarian leader, still stunned by Ethan's actions, tried to regain control. His insectoid features twitched with frustration, but his voice remained calm, though tinged with suspicion. This information you shared, Ethan, is unsettling, the Xylarian said. It suggests that humanity was once a force to be reckoned with. But how can we trust that what you've shown us is true? You claim to have knowledge of forgotten civilizations, yet we have no proof. Ethan didn't flinch. His expression was calm, his gaze unwavering. The proof is in what I've already shown you, he replied. The map, the artifact, the crystal, they are not fakes. They are pieces of a much larger puzzle. And if you're willing to listen, there is much more to uncover. But the Xylarian wasn't convinced. He stood tall, his alien eyes narrowing. Perhaps, he said, we've been too lenient in allowing the human to speak so freely. It is clear that your knowledge, while interesting, is dangerous. What you propose could upset the delicate balance of the galaxy. A murmur rippled through the council. The tension was palpable. Several other alien leaders, some from powerful and ancient races, exchanged uneasy glances. They too were beginning to see the implications of what Ethan had shared. If humanity's ancient power was real, it could challenge the existing order of the galaxy. One of the more cautious voices, a representative from the planet Cirrus, spoke up. We have worked for centuries to maintain the peace and stability of this galaxy. Humanity's sudden rise, if they truly are the ancient force Ethan claims, could threaten that. If they are indeed capable of such power, they must be contained. Ethan's eyes flickered with understanding, but he did not respond immediately. He had known this moment would come. The powerful alien races of the galaxy would never accept humanity's sudden rise without resistance. It was human nature to fear what they did not understand. A young, ambitious alien from the planet Veller stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension. Contain them. How do you intend to contain a species that has already proven they can unlock secrets we cannot even comprehend? She turned to Ethan. You have shown us something none of us could have imagined. I want to know more. What else do you know about humanity's past?" The room fell silent at her words. The other council members shifted uncomfortably. It was clear that some were still unwilling to accept Ethan's claims, but there were also those who saw the potential for an alliance. The more cautious races feared what humanity could become if left unchecked, while others were intrigued by the possibility of learning from them. Ethan finally spoke, his voice low but firm. "Humanity is not here to conquer. We are here to remember, to awaken. The galaxy fears us because you do not understand who we are. But if you are willing to listen, if you are willing to accept the truth of our past, we can all move forward together." His words hung in the air, and for the first time, there was a real sense of division within the council. Some of the races, frightened by what humanity represented, began to plan their next steps carefully. They would not allow the balance of power to shift so easily. Others, however, saw a future where humanity's ancient knowledge could be a key to unlocking the mysteries of the universe. But one thing was clear: resistance had already begun. The universe may not have been ready for humanity's return, but it was already too late to turn back. The tension in the council chamber was thicker than ever. Ethan's words had shaken the very foundation of what the Galactic Council had believed for centuries. On one hand, there were those who feared what humanity could become if allowed to reclaim its ancient power. On the other hand, there were those who, like the Eldarians, were curious about the human race's lost history and the potential knowledge it could unlock. It was a dangerous divide, one that threatened to tear the council apart. As the meeting resumed, the Xylarian leader stood up again, his voice cold and commanding. "Enough of this. The human has shown us a few old artifacts, but that does not change the fact that humanity is a young race with no real standing in the galaxy. We cannot allow them to disrupt the balance of power." Ethan remained seated, his expression unreadable. He had expected this resistance. He knew that some would see humanity's return as a threat, but he was not going to back down. The truth had to be told, no matter the cost. "I understand your fear," Ethan said, his voice calm yet firm. "But you are wrong if you believe that humanity poses a danger to the galaxy. We are not here to conquer or control. We are here to remember, to awaken." The council members exchanged uneasy glances. It was clear that the divide was growing. Some were still unwilling to trust humanity, while others, like the Eldarians and the Valorians, saw the potential for a new alliance, one that could shift the entire balance of power in the galaxy. One of the more influential members, a tall, armored being from the planet Ronax, spoke up. "Perhaps we should not dismiss humanity so quickly," he said, his voice booming across the room. "The power they possess is real. We have seen it with our own eyes. If they truly are the ancient race they claim to be, then it is in our best interest to understand them, not fear them." A murmur of agreement passed through the chamber, but the Xylarian leader was not convinced. "And what of the consequences?" he argued. "What happens if they awaken all of their forgotten knowledge and decide to challenge us? We cannot allow that to happen." The room grew even more divided. The idea of humanity challenging the established powers of the galaxy was too much for some to accept. They had built their empires over centuries, and the thought of a once great race returning to reclaim its place was terrifying. But there were also those who saw the potential for cooperation. The Eldarians, with their ancient wisdom, were among the first to speak up in support of humanity. "We must not be blinded by fear," said the Eldarian leader, his voice soft but carrying the weight of ages. "If humanity was once great, as Ethan claims, then perhaps it is time for them to rise again. We must help them, not fight them." The Xylarian leader's expression darkened, his antennae twitching in frustration. "I will not allow the balance of power to be disturbed by the whims of one human or his race," he declared. "I will not stand by while the galaxy is thrown into chaos." The council was at a crossroads. The debate was becoming more heated, with each race defending their own interests. Ethan remained quiet, watching as the council members argued. He knew that this moment was crucial. If he could not convince them to unite, the galaxy would be split, and humanity's chance at a brighter future would be lost. Finally, the council president, a wise being from the ancient planet Sirius, raised his hand, calling for silence. The chamber fell still. We cannot continue this discussion without understanding the full extent of what we are dealing with, the president said, his voice steady and calm. Ethan, you have shown us a glimpse of humanity's past, but we need more. If we are to trust you, if we are to allow humanity to re-enter the galaxy's stage, we must know everything. Ethan nodded. This was the moment he had been waiting for. I will show you, he said simply. But first, you must be ready to face the truth. The chamber was filled with an uneasy silence after Ethan's last words. The council members, divided by their fears and curiosity, now faced a decision. Could they trust the human who had uncovered so much of humanity's forgotten past? Or would they allow their fears to control their actions? The council president from Sirius stood up again, his long silver robes sweeping across the floor. His voice was steady, though his eyes betrayed a hint of concern. We have heard enough claims, he said, his tone firm but not unkind. But claims alone are not enough. If humanity truly holds the key to the past, then we must understand how. Show us the truth, Ethan. Show us everything. Ethan nodded slowly. The moment had come. He was about to reveal something the galaxy had long forgotten. A truth so deep that it could change everything. He stood up and moved to the center of the chamber, where a large holographic display flickered to life before him. The council members watched, some still unsure of what they were about to witness. Ethan's hands hovered above the control panel, and the room's lights dimmed. The hologram shifted, showing the vast expanse of the galaxy. But this time, it wasn't the galaxy they knew. The map was different. It was older. And it wasn't just a map of space. It was a map of time itself. This, Ethan began, is a map of the true history of the universe. It shows the rise and fall of civilizations, but it also shows something else. It shows the cyclical nature of time. The council members leaned in, their eyes fixed on the hologram. Ethan continued. What you see here is not just a timeline. It's a record of cycles. Every few millennia, civilizations rise to power, only to fall again. Each time, the knowledge of the past is lost, buried beneath the rubble of war, fear, and greed. Humanity was once at the height of one of these cycles, a force that shaped the stars. But after our fall, we became a memory, forgotten by the universe. A shiver ran through the room. The idea that time itself could be cyclical was a concept that no one had considered, and the fact that humanity had once been a part of these cycles was almost too much to believe. The reason you don't remember humanity as the powerful force it once was, Ethan continued, is because the universe itself has erased it. When we fell, it wasn't just our civilization that crumbled. The very fabric of time was altered. The knowledge we once had was hidden, scattered across the stars. And now, it is slowly beginning to awaken. Ethan stepped back, allowing the council to absorb what he had said. The room was filled with stunned silence. The implications were enormous. If time truly worked in cycles, then it meant that every species, every race, might have already risen and fallen before. And if humanity was returning to the stage, it could mean that the cycle was about to begin again. The Xylarian leader, who had been the most vocal in his opposition, was now speechless. His eyes, usually filled with suspicion, were wide with a mix of awe and fear. So, you're saying? The Xylarian finally spoke, his voice shaking slightly, that humanity is not just a young race, but a race that has lived, died, and returned before. Ethan nodded. Yes, we are not new to this galaxy. We are the echoes of a forgotten past, a past that will soon be remembered. The council president's voice broke the silence. If this is true, then what does it mean for the galaxy? What happens when humanity returns to its rightful place in this cycle? Ethan's gaze was calm, but his answer was filled with weight. It means the universe will change. The cycle is beginning again. And this time, humanity will not fall. We will rise. The room was quiet, but the tension was palpable. The council members, though still unsure, now understood one thing. Humanity was not just a forgotten race. They were the key to unlocking the mysteries of the universe, and their return would change everything. The question remained, was the galaxy ready for humanity's return? Or would they resist the truth, as they always had? Only time would tell. The council chamber was quiet as Ethan's words hung in the air. The truth he had revealed was too vast, too unimaginable for some to fully grasp. Yet, despite their uncertainty, there was no denying the weight of his revelation. Humanity was not the young race they had believed it to be. They were the ancient ones, the ones who had once shaped the galaxy. And now, they were returning. The room was filled with murmurs, but Ethan stood still, his gaze unwavering. He had told the council the truth, and now it was out in the open. The question that remained was, what would the galaxy do with this knowledge? The Cirrus leader, who had remained mostly quiet throughout the meeting, finally spoke. His voice was calm but carried the authority of ages. "This is a lot to take in," he said. "The implications of your words are far-reaching, but we must ask ourselves, if humanity has indeed returned to reclaim its place in the galaxy, what does that mean for the rest of us? Will the balance of power shift? Will we be forced to acknowledge humanity's place as one of the galaxy's true elders?" Ethan nodded. The balance of power will shift, yes, but it is not about dominance. It is about reclaiming what was lost and helping others understand the cycles of time. Humanity is not here to rule. We are here to restore the wisdom of the past and guide the galaxy forward. The room fell into silence once again. Some members of the council were still skeptical, unsure whether they could trust Ethan's vision. Others, however, were beginning to see the potential of what he had said. The Eldarians, wise and patient, exchanged knowing glances. They understood the danger of ignoring the past, and they saw that humanity's return could be the key to unlocking the galaxy's true potential. The Tylarian leader, who had been one of the fiercest opponents of humanity's rise, finally spoke. His voice was quieter now, less forceful than before. "I still have my doubts," he said, "but I cannot deny the evidence you have presented. Perhaps humanity's time has come again." Ethan's eyes met the Xylarian leader's. There was no anger in his gaze, only calm certainty. The cycle is changing, and whether you believe it or not, humanity will play a part in it. We will rise again, but not as conquerors. We will rise as guides, as teachers, as the bringers of a new age. The room was divided, but there was a shift in the atmosphere. Those who had once feared humanity were now reconsidering their stance, and those who had supported humanity were more resolute than ever. The council had heard the truth, and it was now up to them to decide what to do with it. In the days that followed, the galaxy began to stir. The ancient devices that humanity had left behind, hidden in forgotten corners of space, began to awaken. They called out to those who could hear, calling out to the races who had once been allies, and to those who had been enemies. The universe was changing, and the cycle was beginning anew. But not all was calm. A powerful faction of alien races, still unwilling to accept the truth of humanity's past, began to plan in secret. They feared what humanity's return would mean for their power and influence, but as their plans took shape, they knew one thing for certain. The galaxy was no longer the same. Ethan had spoken the truth. Humanity was not a young race. They were the elders of the galaxy, and their time had come once again. And with that, the universe held its breath, waiting for what would come next. The days after Ethan's revelation were filled with unease and anticipation. The council chamber, once filled with voices of debate, now stood still, as though the universe itself was holding its breath. The power of the galaxy had always been divided, but now, with humanity's return to prominence, the balance was shifting. The ancient devices that Ethan had unlocked were stirring across distant corners of space, sending ripples through the fabric of galactic politics. The question everyone was asking was simple yet profound. What would humanity do now that it had awakened from its long slumber? Would they seek revenge for their past destruction? Or would they take their place among the stars as teachers, as guardians, as the forgotten elders returning to guide the universe? Ethan stood before the council once more, a quiet resolve in his eyes. He knew the path ahead wouldn't be easy. There were still factions within the galaxy that sought to maintain their hold on power, and many of them saw humanity as a threat to the status quo. They would stop at nothing to prevent the rise of a species they had long dismissed as weak and insignificant. Ethan, the Cirrus leader, spoke, his voice softer now, more contemplative than before. We are witnessing the awakening of something far greater than we could have imagined. Humanity's past is now clear, but we must ask ourselves, can the galaxy accept this truth? Can we work together, or will your return create new divisions? Ethan didn't hesitate. The galaxy must accept the truth, whether they like it or not. The cycle has turned, and humanity is part of it. But we do not seek conflict. Our purpose is to restore balance, to remember what was lost and guide the galaxy forward. The council was divided, as it had been since the beginning. Some members still feared what humanity's return could mean. Others, like the Eldarians, saw potential for unity and a new era of cooperation. But one thing was clear: the galaxy had already begun to change. The ancient machines that humanity had left behind were awakening, sending out signals, calling out to anyone who could hear. In the days that followed, strange occurrences were reported across the galaxy. Once dormant colonies on distant planets began to experience strange phenomena: holographic images of humanity's past, cryptic messages in ancient languages, and the sudden appearance of artifacts long thought to be myths. The galaxy was being drawn into a web of forgotten knowledge, a web that humanity had spun centuries ago. The Xylarian leader, who had once been adamantly opposed to humanity's rise, was now more cautious. He gathered his closest advisors and spoke in hushed tones. If the humans are truly awakening, we must be prepared. We cannot let them undo the power we have built over millennia. Across the council chamber, the Eldarian representative stood, raising his hand to speak. The time of fear is over. Humanity's past is not something to be feared. It is something to be understood. The galaxy has forgotten its own history, and now it must learn. Ethan watched as the room divided once more, but this time the divisions felt different. It was no longer about whether humanity should be allowed to rise. It was about how they would do so, and what that would mean for the future. As the council debated, Ethan felt the weight of the past pressing down on him. He had always known that humanity's return would not be easy. The galaxy had changed, and so had humanity. But one thing remained true: the lost legacy of his people was theirs to reclaim. It was time for humanity to remember who they were, and to remind the galaxy of the power of the cycle that had been forgotten. The stage was set. The universe had no idea what was coming. The council was on the edge of a new beginning, though no one fully understood where this new path would lead. The debates had settled, and while there was still fear, there was also a growing sense of curiosity and anticipation. The universe had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations, but humanity's return marked the start of something entirely different. The ancient cycle was beginning again, and the galaxy could not ignore it any longer. Ethan stood before the council, now more certain than ever of humanity's role in the universe. He had shared the truth with them, revealed the lost knowledge of his people, and shown them that the past was not truly gone. It was simply waiting to be remembered. The time for humanity to rise had come, and the council could no longer deny it. "The time of hiding is over," Ethan said, his voice steady and calm. "Humanity has always been part of this galaxy's history. We will not allow our past to remain buried any longer, but we also do not seek to rule. Our purpose is to guide, to help the galaxy remember what it once knew. The council president, a wise and ancient being from the planet Cirrus, spoke up. His voice was heavy with the weight of history, and his gaze lingered on Ethan for a long moment before he addressed the chamber. "Humanity has shown us a side of the galaxy we have long forgotten," he said. "You have proven that your race was once a great force, but the question now is, what kind of future do you want to create? Do you seek power, or do you seek something greater?" Ethan's eyes met the Cirrus leaders, and he could feel the weight of the question. The future of the galaxy, and humanity's place in it, hung in the balance. "We seek unity," Ethan answered. "The galaxy is vast, and its people are divided. But we have all experienced the rise and fall of civilizations. We understand the cycles, and we know the importance of balance. We do not seek domination. We seek understanding. We seek the restoration of knowledge lost to time." The room was silent, each council member processing the truth of Ethan's words. The idea of balance and understanding was foreign to some. Many had spent their lives fighting for dominance, for control of the galaxy's vast resources. But now, there was a new path. A path where cooperation, not conflict, could define the future. A representative from the Valorian people, a race known for their scientific advancements, stood up. "If humanity truly believes in this vision of peace and restoration, we will support it," she said, her voice firm. "We are ready to learn from you." The Tylarian leader, who had been one of the most resistant to humanity's rise, seemed to soften. His sharp features relaxed as he spoke. "I still have doubts, but I cannot deny the power of the truth you have shown us. Perhaps the galaxy has forgotten too much." Slowly, one by one, the members of the council began to speak in agreement. The fear that had once held them back was starting to fade, replaced by a growing sense of hope. Humanity, it seemed, was not a threat, but a key to unlocking a better future for all. Ethan knew that the journey ahead would not be easy. There would still be challenges, still those who resisted change. But for the first time in centuries, the galaxy was united in a shared vision to reclaim the knowledge of the past and build a new age. Humanity's place in the universe had been reclaimed. The cycles of time had turned, and the stars once again belonged to those who had the courage to face the truth. The universe had no idea what was coming, but for the first time, the future seemed filled with endless possibilities. The new age had begun, and humanity would lead the way.